And for those of you that are live streaming in from the UK, US, India, even Cuba, top of the morning, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Now, I've got two interesting guests that have joined me on the couch this morning. We've got the Trade Commissioner for Foreign Secretariat, Glynis Miller, as well as Noah Patrick, the Program Advisor at Trade. And, they're here this morning to talk to us a little bit more about Glynis has been doing a lot of traveling and, of course, to small SMEs and of course Noah, a very good morning to you. It's good to have you guys on the show this morning.
Thank you very much for having us.
Through. Well, first of all, maybe I'd like to start off with you, Glynis. I know that you've been doing quite a lot of traveling, visiting around the country, of course discussing export opportunities. And maybe I'd like to start off with asking you, what are some of the familiar questions that you get from people when you're, or from businesses when you're actually traveling with them? Some of the things that they tell you about their businesses.
Good morning. Thank you very much. It's been a really interesting visit. More so for a learning curve, more so a learning for Pacific Trade Invest New Zealand. In understanding and through our interactions with the small businesses, getting to understand and see physically what their challenges are, particularly under COVID conditions. So one of the learnings is you get to understand how they've had to adjust their business concepts, and the resilience has come through. I think that's a good point to note, and also the drive and how businesses just stay committed, with all the challenges that's around them: high freight costs, transport costs, production cost, lack of market knowledge or market access. They're still able to get to break through some of those barriers.
And are there real potential opportunities of export that you see from your visits?
Yes, certainly. So fundamentally, the purpose of my visit was it's a scoping mission. Right. So to visit our clients, and these are clients that we have established relationships before COVID. So it was important for us to be on the ground presence, just to show them that somebody's out there that cares and still has their business interests at heart. And to see firsthand, as I said, what their products are and how they've managed. And a few of them have made some adjustments because of COVID. So they're trying new things. And to me, that was the innovation that's coming through was quite interesting. And on my part, it was about informing them about the New Zealand market, giving them some market intelligence about how their product could sit in the New Zealand market, the different market segmentations, what we do as Pacific Trade Invest to help small businesses like them to get their products into New Zealand. So that was the purpose of the visit.
Yeah. So was there good feedback from them in terms of, when you're showing?
Yes, absolutely. So a few, I visited from plantations to production houses to factories. And the potential is there. So there was a mixture. So the visits were a mixture of clients. In one category, you have emerging businesses that are not yet export ready but have a world-class product. And on the other hand, in the other category, you have established businesses who have been around for a long time, who have products to export, and it was about seeing, okay, are you exporting to New Zealand? Yes or no? And then taking it from there to see, okay, look, your product can enter the New Zealand market under these provisions, ensuring that so we go through all of the market access provisions and explanations with them, and they're very, the feedback was just overwhelming, and I think the appreciation, that there's someone out there that's really interested to know what they're doing and keen to get their product to market. And yes, I feel very, very fulfilled that I've accomplished what I came for.
Awesome. Noah, I know that you're a team leader for trade at the Pacific Islands Foreign Secretariat. Can you please explain the relationship between PIFS and PTI officers?
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. And the Forum Secretariat has the mandate by forum leaders to support our forum members in developing their regional policies on trade to complement the national trade policies. And back in the early 1970s, senior officials discuss whether there will be an agency that can support, promote and market the products of the Pacific Island countries in different regions of the world, and that's why they came up with the Pacific Trade Invest Network. And leaders recognize Pacific Trade Invest Network has a promotion and marketing agency of the Pacific Island Forum to make sure that they identify market access opportunities, helping attracting investment, for instance, talking to potential investors that they want to come and invest in the Pacific, and making sure that the products that are going to Australia, New Zealand, or Europe, China, can, or even Australia, can access those markets without any hindrance. And that's one of the main important elements that the forum is actually helping in terms of implementations of these regional, I would say, trade agreements that we have. Because we can go and negotiate trade agreements, but implementation of it, it's something that we have to look at where are the markets to access and also export our products to those markets. So that's one. And our BTNI support as well the private sector. I think the Trade Commissioner has mentioned it in terms of how helping those private sector and small businesses in particular to access those markets. And we always going to talk about standard and quality of our product going to the islands, to Australia, New Zealand, or even Europe and China, but and Australia. The thing is that we have to make sure that the compliance of the standard and also quality, it's there to make sure that we don't have any issues when the products arrive in the border. So BTNI offices are there to allow, to help and facilitate that as well, to make sure that the product, when they go there, they are complying with those standards.
No, it's absolutely correct. At the time, you must remember, in the early 1970s, the region wasn't as mature as it is today, as a regional bloc. So when our officials came together, the forum officials came together, the discussions at the time was looking at how can we promote or advance our presence in our closest markets of Australia and New Zealand. That was the focus. A lot of the countries at the time didn't have established industries. There were infant industries just coming through. You must remember that was an era where some of our economies were just coming post-independence. So collectively, there was a collective desire by the forum officials to have a presence, a regional presence in the markets that they, in their export markets. So Australia and New Zealand were the first on the horizon. So back in the early 1970s at those meetings and those discussions, there was this growing desire, if you like, by the region to have a presence, because none of them could afford to have have an office in those days. And our records show that the discussions were rich and vibrant, and that the Australian government very kindly put up their hand and offered to host the first Pacific Trade. And our name has gone through some changes since then. We were called the South Pacific Trade Commission in the early days, South Pacific Trade Office, so many acronyms. We branded ourselves in the 2012 as the Pacific Trade Invest, and we belong to a network. So that was how the trade offices came about. So Australia government very kindly made a commitment to establish and set up the first office in Sydney. And a few years later, a decade later, New Zealand followed, and then China and Geneva. But under our construct, we're a part of the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat and its members, and that's an important point to note, because it's through that association that we have such the richness and access to our members into the region. So in New Zealand, it's quite interesting. We're the only agency in New Zealand that has access to 16 island countries. That in itself is, you can't measure those associations and those partnerships. And that's only because we're associated with the Pacific Islands Forum and its secretariat.
Awesome. Now, Glynis, you mentioned that when you went out, visiting small businesses, you noticed how, you felt that they felt that you felt that sense of appreciation that you have. Do you think there's enough awareness, especially going out to awareness that's been made, through small businesses? Because after COVID, I felt like there's a boom, it's so sort of like I keep saying, it's like a blessing in disguise that a lot of small businesses have come up, but they don't know, you know, a lot of them don't know what to do, how to go about doing what you're. So do you think that awareness should be one of the main things that should be brought up to them?
And look, I've been talking to some of the companies that I've visited are members of collectors and associations under FSIF. And I was saying to Kalameli the other day that there needs to be perhaps more effort on the micro enterprises, so growing those in the informal sector into the formal sector. Because when you export, you can't export if you're in the informal sector. Right. You need to be a registered business, you need to have your business plans, you need to have an export plan. So at the ground level, I think the efforts by the Fiji authorities, they're going in the right direction, but perhaps they need some assistance. So they are going in the right direction to grow those businesses. When they become export ready, that's when Pacific Trade Invest and the Forum Secretariat steps in and provides those, the suite of assistance.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah,
just to add on what the Trade Commissioner mentioned is also the fact that the Pacific Trade Invest during this COVID-19, they have this monitoring survey, and they are monitoring those businesses. And I think 86% of those businesses came back with like decrease on their revenues, and some of them, for instance, I just give like 88% declined, and 36% of them said that the revenue for post-COVID-19 we still have an issue. And some of them, the good thing is that they started to go to online platforms, using online platform, and that's why where BTNI offices actually help as well. For instance, when we talk about New Zealand, but also Australia, supporting those businesses to trade online. And that's one of the work that the Secretariat is initiating, as well as a regional initiative on electronic commerce, and the work is ongoing. So we are looking towards pre-COVID how we can continue helping our small businesses.
I think for businesses on the ground, it's important for them to know that there's people out there that's listening to them, that has their interests at heart. And I'm not saying for that Pacific Trade Invest is the answer to everything. We don't have the solutions for everybody. We've got to work within our means and within our resources and within our mandate. We're fortunate to be funded by the New Zealand government, and as I said, we report to the Pacific Islands Forum, and that relationship with businesses is, I mean, we have over, I think, close to 2,000 clients across the 16 countries, and we, must ensure that the assistance that we provide in any shape or form results in an export to New Zealand.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Glynis, and thank you so much, for coming. Unfortunately, time has caught up with us, but I'm sure, I would like to invite you back to talk more about this. But thank you very much again for coming on the show this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, well, stay with us, and we come back after the break. We've got more.